Well, I like our kicker. This is RamView.
It's hot out there. Let's blow them off the line of scrimmage. Headline, Los Angeles.
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Trosian, and this is RamView, the November the 6th, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident, need help, got questions, call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. So glad to be here, so happy to be here, so miserable to be here after that Ram game yesterday. Just a quick note, I think we've tracked down a lot of our audio issues. I think we know what it is. If you hear that, one more time, let me know, and we're going to know specifically what it is. If you hear the snap, crackle, pop that happened last week, it didn't happen on Friday when nobody listened to the show, but it happened on Wednesday when everybody listened to the show. So if you can help us out, let us know if you're hearing it today, and we're going to be able to track it down. So maybe not before the show is over, but we'll get it tracked down. Okay, speaking of the Ram game, I've never been waterboarded, okay? Never been through that kind of torture of being waterboarded. But the football equivalent to being waterboarded had to be watching the Rams yesterday and watching them repeatedly refuse to take a game that the Green Bay Packers were trying so hard to give away in front of their fans, right? It's like, we don't want it. You take it. No, you take it, right? It was horrible. It was as brutal a game to watch as I've seen, which is the way all the games seem to happen up in Lambeau. I hope we get to go back up there next year, right? We've gone there for 4 consecutive years, 4 consecutive losses. Right off the top, I'm not for firing anybody. That's really foolish talk. I've never been more pro Raheem Morris than I am now. And you're not living in the real world if you think McVay should be fired. He's not Josh McDaniels, right? He's not Ron Rivera. This guy has a ring on his finger, not just a wedding ring. He's got a rock that says Super Bowl 56 on it. So, let's let that one ride. But with that said, if I feel very comfortable bagging on Matthew Stafford, who I really like, because he has thrown some horrible passes, right? Not every pick that he's thrown has been his fault. None of them in the Super Bowl were, but he has made some bad passes. Okay. If we can come after him, we can come after Sean McVay and say that he made some horrible calls that are not just questionable, but absolutely downright horrible. And it happens to everybody. You know, we all have a bad show, right? All the jokes can't be good. You can't be perfect all the time. And I thought yesterday, after watching that game, you could say Brett Rippon, you could say all sorts of things, but I put it all back on Sean McVay, the play calling, and then we can go to the decisions of the McSnead cabal there that make choices on the personnel they keep and what they want to do going forward. Let's look at this. First, I want to talk about the calls, right? Early in the game, it's 3rd and inches. And instead of just falling forward, this is before Green Bay's established dominance on the offensive line. Just instead of just falling forward with Rippon or going straight into the line behind Dotson for 6 inches? Is that all we needed? McVay calls the jet sweep. Hey, I like a jet sweep, right? I love a good jet sweep. I like the play. I just hated it being called there. And of course, if you're going to call it there, you really need to put it in the hands of Tutu Atwell, the burner, or Nakua or Cup or somebody there who's on the field a lot more than Skoranek. I think teams are picking up on it. We've seen Skoranek run that jet sweep at least 2 or 3 times this year already. We saw him run it last year. And he doesn't get enough offensive snaps, not enough to where you're just going to say, well, they're not going to run the jet sweep with him. He slips, and of course they're forced to punt. And then the other question begs, in today's NFL, unless it's a jet sweep, who really thinks any team in the NFL is going to run wide? Why would the Rams think they're going to run wide with Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman, right? Those guys are built to go between the tackles. And McVay really, Sean did, you need to listen, scrap student body right until Havenstein and Kyron Williams are back, okay? Because your other tackles, Note Boom, they're not getting it done. And either it's just a complete lack of confidence in Rippon or a lack of creativity by McVay. There was a 4th and 2 late in the game in the second half where instead of passing the ball, because by that point, the offensive line has shown it can't block anybody, right? They can't block a single soul. And it's 4th and 2 and you decide you're going to run it. Is that just you're not creative enough or you don't believe in Brett Rippon? Right? I don't get it. You're only down by 7. You have an opportunity to stay in this game. You have Brett Rippon on the roster for a reason, right? Getting to another point here, Daryl Moose Johnson, right? Moose, he kind of implied it, but I'll say it a little more clearly. This is how I heard it. If you don't have confidence in your quarterback, you got to throw the ball on first down. Okay. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but here's the thing. If you don't have confidence in your quarterback, you have to throw the ball on first down because first down is the mystery down, right? It is the down where, hey, they can run or they can pass. It's the beginning of a series. It's 1st and 10, right? The offensive line was not moving the line of scrimmage at a certain point. Halfway through the first half, that was over. That was done. They decided we're not blocking anybody today. We'll drop back in coverage, but we're not really from pass coverage or pass protection, but we're not really going to move anybody off the line of scrimmage, right? So you need to throw on first down, right? In retrospect, I think Rippon should have thrown the ball 25 times in the first half just to get comfortable. You're playing with Brett Rippon. Come on. It's not like you're bringing Earl Morrall off the bench and you think you got a shot, or Don Strock or somebody like that. Heck, it's not even Gardner Minshew. It's Brett Rippon, and you're going to lose anyway, probably, right? Because they're going to figure it out. The offensive line decided they weren't going to block anybody. So we better just get to some quick passes, get him in shotgun, and just get this thing going to speed it up, get Rippon as comfortable as he possibly can, right? There are times that McVay is as predictable as a Nicholas Sparks novel. Have you ever been conned into reading a Nicholas Sparks novel? Now, I've read several books. Mark Reber, the whole NFC West scored 6 points yesterday. Yeah, tell me about it, right? That was they didn't even score a touchdown, right? No one even scored a touchdown. The Rams and Seahawks both had a field goal. But there are times that it reads like a Nicholas Sparks novel. My wife had me read a Nicholas Sparks book, and basically they're all the same. You meet someone, you fall in love, and they die, right? It's a given. Nicholas Sparks, meet someone, fall in love, and they die. Sean McVay, sometimes it's like just read his book, right? Jet Sweep to Skoranek. There's just sometimes there's no predictability, or he has no confidence in the personnel he has out there. But whose fault is it that he doesn't have confidence? You saw yesterday why Brett Rippon was in the NFL. He's got a nice arm. And you saw the throw he made to Cup. He can make a great throw occasionally, at least enough to stay on someone's payroll. But he's incapable of making a snap decision, and that's why he's a backup. I'll take less arm and a quicker processor, right? A good example of that in the past would be, because I'm going to mention the Chargers in the past, Dan Fouts. Dan Fouts didn't have a huge arm, but he was a processor, man. He was a processor. And they make decisions quick. Slow processing puts pressure on the offensive line. Side note here, why wasn't Rippon wearing gloves early in the game when he's fumbling it everywhere? And finally, the $1 million question. The reason Rippon is on this roster is because of McVay and Nick Snead. Look who the Rams have had as backup quarterbacks the whole the whole McSnead run together since 2017. The Blake Bortles, the John Wolfords, what was it, Brandon Allen or Kyle Allen? I think it was Kyle Allen, Brandon Allen. All these nondescript backup quarterbacks that you're hoping will never have to play. Jared Goff never missed a game, hardly ever missed a game. Jared Goff was always out there. Stafford's older; he's going to get banged up, and so you're going to have to invest in an offensive, in a competent backup quarterback. You're just going to have to, otherwise you go through this. To sum it all up, this one is on McVay, and I can live with it. Okay, it's on McVay. I'm not saying fire him. I'm not saying suspend him. I'm not saying look to trade him. I'm not saying look to draft another coach or something. But this one's on McVay because Rippon was on this roster last year. John Wolford was on this roster. Bryce Perkins, who you kept on this roster, the active 53 for 2 years, for some reason, you gave him one start in Kansas City, and then you decided he wasn't the guy. And the one start you gave him was an Arrowhead. Go figure, right? Maybe you should have sweetened the deal for Baker Mayfield a little bit. I understand Mayfield wanted to play. Maybe there should have been some other routes to take that meant you're going to have to spend some cash. I don't know. Put Tyler Higbee in the street and sign a competent backup quarterback, because Tyler Higbee obviously isn't a competent tight end right now. Oh, did I let that slip? Did I get a little emotional there? Alaric Jackson and Joe Noteboom. They are really competent backups in the NFL, right? I've seen enough to know that they're not full-time starters, right? I think spot starters, great. Noteboom doesn't seem to have that red meat attitude that he wants to hurt somebody. Alaric Jackson was an undrafted free agent for a reason, and I think we've milked out of him his top level. It was just amazing. It's I understand it when you've got Micah Parsons lining up on an edge. I understand when there's a Bosa brother out there lining up on the edge. Hey, those guys are going to terrorize the best in the NFL. But there are times you look at Jackson and Noteboom, and you're just going, wow, they're just letting some chumps get in there, and you're wondering what's going on. And then if they're not going to pound the road, if they're not going to pave the road, then help me, please. They're competent backups. We know what they are, and now we know what they are not, right? So now the question becomes, where you were kind of hoping, I was kind of hoping they would take the next step up. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. Where do you take a quarterback? Where do you take a tackle in the draft? Where do you spend money in free agency? The offensive line was terrible yesterday. And I saw where some people were trying to put this on Freeman and Darrell Henderson. O.J. Simpson, well, let's throw it out. Jim Brown wouldn't have made yardage against the Packers yesterday where the Rams were blocking. There you go. That's enough hyperbole for me to get my point across. That offensive line was terrible yesterday. Terrible. Even Steve Avila was terrible. They were terrible. Problem with Tyler Higbee is A, drops the ball, B, inability to block, C, 3-year extension, which is essentially 20 rocks for the next 2 seasons, or D, all of the above. I push all of the above. I do not get it. I think at 30, he's given us his best. He gets whacked every game. He takes the hit. He's a stud. I understand that. And every game he seems to be banged up, right? Every game he seems to be nursing something. You know why? He's 30 and he's in the NFL, and he's exceeded all expectations for a guy from Western Kentucky. You know, right? The Hilltoppers run out of gas, and we extended his contract. I'm not saying that Davis Allen or Bryson Hopkins are any better, but for goodness gracious sakes alive, you could go out and sign Corey Harkey, and he could block better for you than Tyler Higbee is doing. I mean, that's one thing. If he can't even get a block down, what value is he? Do I sound like I'm losing it a little bit here? Oh, I don't want to sound like I'm losing it here. I'll answer some questions here in a second. My question here was, at the end of the first half, the Packers had no timeouts, right? They were inside the 50, and there's 15 seconds left, and the Rams chose not to bring any pressure with 15 seconds left, which means if they had brought pressure when Jordan Love took the snap and just threw it, and they tackled the guy, and they got up to spike the ball with like 1 second left, that if they had just had somebody come and put a little pressure on Jordan Love, that maybe he wouldn't have got that pass off so quickly and they wouldn't have had time to spike the ball. Instead, it gave Green Bay an opportunity to gain yardage and attempt a field goal that, unfortunately for the Rams, was missed. Defensively, Packers converted 7 out of 14 third downs. They're still having a hard time getting off the field. They're still playing like a young team. But for being on the field for 81 snaps, they only gave up 20 points. And, of course, that one was garbage at the end, that touchdown. But the Packers scored 20 points. The Bengals scored 19. Philly scored 23. Steelers scored 24. One of those was a gift because Stafford set them up with the pick. The Seahawks only scored 13 against the Rams. They've only given up over 30 twice. 30 to Frisco, 43 to Dallas. This team's played well. This defense has played well enough for the Rams to win. In fact, this was where the defense was supposed to be at the back half of the season when I was looking at it, thinking that they had an opportunity to be something. Wow, they're going to stay in contention. I still think that opportunity is there. I did not think the offense would be the problem, and the offense is the problem. Penalties, I thought the offside calls on the Packers were ticky-tack, but I'll take them, right? Because you got to take what you can get. But I'd be furious if those calls were against the Rams, and I'd want some video confirmation on some of those offside calls against the Packers. I think it was Runyon. I thought Atwell was interfered with on his first target in the first half, at least as much as Witherspoon was nailed for PI later in the first half. And honestly, that's what it is. It's all about the consistency, right? The pass interference on Nakua in the second half, right? So my theory is that if you're a receiver and a defender wraps you up like Jair Alexander was wrapping up Nakua on that play, and you shove him off, so you're going to get called for pass interference. My question is, as Alexander's wrapping up Nakua, what's Nakua supposed to do? Is he supposed to just go along with it and say, oh, shucks, I guess I'm out of the play? NFL needs to get their act together. Sorry. They need to go back and figure out a way to review pass interference. It does need to be reviewable. Last mention on defense. Let me ask you this question. What's worse than Michael Hoyt in coverage? I got something worse than Michael Hoyt in coverage. It's called Troy Reeder in coverage. Did you see Troy Reeder in coverage? Yeah. Okay. Small, not important thing here. I didn't like the smiles I saw on Aaron Donald and Michael Hoyt's faces at the end of the game. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, especially Aaron Donald, but I didn't like the smiles. I want somebody angry at the end of the game. I want them angry, right? I want them furious. I want them breaking things. It's that kind of a sport, right? It's that kind of a sport. And so literally, if you've got passion, motivation, energy, you can knock the crud out of somebody else, even a team that's physically better than you, and you can make a move. But you got to have that motor kicking, right? And if the motor's not kicking, you're going to look like the Rams did on Sunday. Finally, my last ad here before we move on is I'm good with the Rams kicker. I'm good with him. I think that's the least of our problems. Okay, around the NFL and other places yesterday, did you see the Eagles team, right? Did you see that team that beat Dallas yesterday? Isn't it weird to think that the Rams had an opportunity to beat them? The Rams were in the game against the Eagles, right? Other places, Alex Grinch, the SCDC, finally got the boom lowered on him. And I agree, he probably didn't have the best players, but this was his second year. And at least in the second year, you have a little more intake of who comes into your program. And there should have been a little more improvement. But I think they've averaged 40 plus in the last 5 weeks that people have been scoring on them. They've gone from bad to historically awful. Bro had to go, right? I mean, who should have been fired quicker, Josh McDaniels or Alex Grinch, right? Last ad, USC, before I move on. I'm a cynical person by nature, sarcastic. Spite is the realm I operate in. My eyes are always open when someone is trying to sell me a narrative, right? I watch the draft, but I can't stand how there's the kid playing for his, three-eyed grandma who lives in Alaska or something because she took care of him once when he was a kid. I hate that kind of stuff. I just want to see players who can play. That's all I care about, right? I got to be honest with you, the cynical side of me, I'm over Damar Hamlin, right? I'm glad he's alive, glad good work is being done, but I'd rather hear more about Josh Dobbs in Minnesota than Damar Hamlin. Josh Dobbs is more interesting to me, right? When I was a kid, I didn't buy Kellen Winslow's performance against the Dolphins in the 81 playoffs. If you remember that game, if you were a kid, it's my generation. Winslow blocked a kick, made some great catches, and he's having to be helped off by his teammates. I thought there was a bit of Hollywood in that. I wasn't buying. I was skeptical of Isaiah Thomas in the Lakers-Pistons final in 88, running around with his sprained ankle. He buries a 20-footer and his ankle's fine. He gets beat on a drive. His ankle's bad. Whatever. I'm cynical, right? I also roll my eyes every time I see the Lakers' Anthony Davis go to the floor in the apparent agony of a torn ACL, MCL, or both. It's like, gosh, Anthony Davis, I'm so sick of this guy, right? But here's the funny thing. I didn't have the same cynicism when Caleb Williams went to his mom and wept on Saturday night. I thought he wanted a national title. He didn't get it, right? And all those dreams went away, right? And then, I felt bad for him. I felt bad for all those guys that want that. They all get their money. We know they're getting their money more than ever now, but it mattered. And gosh, I just love it when something matters. If I couldn't see Aaron Donald and Michael Hoyt being ticked off and wanting to get in somebody's grill on Sunday afternoon at the end of the game against the Packers, asking, hey, what is this garbage, getting in Alaric Jackson and Joe Noteboom's faces, then at least you know what I want to see. I want to see some anguish on their face. I want to see something that tells me they care, right? And hey, for the people that were saying that Caleb Williams was going to check out after the Arizona loss, I think you misread the room, right? The kid cares, and it wouldn't hurt his draft stock with me. It wouldn't hurt at all, because I want somebody that's passionate, because you know what? Hard work does quite often beat talent if everyone's in sync. When someone is mature at a very young age, we have a tendency to forget they are still very young, and there are areas and there are times they will act their age. The loss was devastating, so I understood it. It didn't bother me. It's funny, but don't give me any of that Kellen Winslow stuff. Dak Prescott is playing great. He keeps banking all that emotional credit for playing so well this year, but I wouldn't re-sign him. But the good news is I think the Cowboys will, and that's always going to keep them a tier below. Josh Allen's taunting penalty last night. He got Nick Scott, the former Ram, to go up. I have a history of that, running downfield and doing the pump fake and the defender going up. And you see Josh Allen point to Nick Scott and give that little smile. And, of course, the officials threw the flag for taunting. Grown, mature men don't know how to handle that, apparently. But Big Brother NFL does, so they throw a flag, right? There was a moment yesterday watching games that I almost felt like turning off the set. There's so many stupid calls on the other side of the field that have no bearing. It's on the long far side of the field while everything's on another side of the field. Had no connection to the play. The ridiculous offensive lineman downfield calls. The non-reviewing on the roughing the passer call. Did you see the roughing the passer when Joe Burrow got knocked down last night? It was preposterous. And then when the officials threw the intentional grounding on Josh Allen, right? Remember they threw the intentional grounding on Josh Allen, and at least Chris Collingsworth called him out a little bit and says, hey, there's something about, letter of the law, but explaining what happened. And he was explaining it was a choice route, and there was confusion between receiver and quarterback. And the Pharisees, who are the new officials, are saying, no, letter of the law, very Pharisaic. And it's like, no, don't you see what's happening here? And the NFL is doing this. It's refusing to see what's happening, right? There are some flags that should be thrown and others they need to hold on to. And because they're throwing so many flags, that the ones that are rightfully being thrown, people are still getting hacked about those. Some of those flags they have to eat, right? I know if I was a coach and I got lost a game or my game was being completely overturned by it, sooner or later, I'll go rogue. I'll take my team off the field, and somebody needs to create a big stink because it's bad. It's just bad. And everyone's going to say, well, it's always been bad. Everyone complains. No, we got cameras now that show us And the calls they're making, taunting on Josh Allen, really? Taunting on, this isn't high school football, taunting on Josh Allen, the roughing the passer call on Joe Burrow. You're not going to review that? Wake up and smell what you're shoveling, man. It's garbage. And they're opening a door that at some point there will be another league at some point that'll say, you know what, we're going to play football. You can go to the National Flag Football League if you want, but over here we're going to play football. And finally, Antonio Pierce, right? Antonio Pierce, I was really happy for him. They got the win. You kind of see it coming. Charger players were really happy. I could see Antonio Pierce, picking off 3 or 4 more wins this year. They finish, 9-8, maybe 9-8, maybe 8-9, and everyone's excited he gets brought back. But grow up, Antonio Pierce. No one's out to get you. And I just didn't get – his players did a great thing. A great thing happened in his career, right? And then because he was trying to please the perpetually angry, he made this comment about first time in history a black GM, a black VP, and a black head coach won a football game. As if the Raiders VP is anything more than window dressing, right? They hired some woman of color, and everyone bragged about it. It's because the NFL is all over their teams, and of course the Raiders are scared to death of everything because of their weak ownership. But, Martin Mayhew, black GM, hired Jim Caldwell, black head coach. Chris Greer, black GM, hired Mike McDaniel, right? Right now, Pittsburgh is operating with Omar Khan, person of color, or is it just the certain person of color, a specific kind person of color, and Mike Tomlin. They're working together. Sashi Brown, the now GM of Baltimore Ravens, was the Browns exec that was there when they hired Hugh Jackson. My thing is Antonio Pierce, worry about football, worry about your players, and be the great story that's being set up for you to be. Don't be chained to the perpetual anger of others, because when you get fired, they're not going to be there for you. Everyone moves on. Ask yourself, how much does Colin Kaepernick move the needle these days? In most circles, Colin's kind of a joke, a caricature of Nike. Nike has turned him into a caricature. Your story for the moment is great, but the mob moves on. And the more you try to please people, the more you get out. Put it this way. I have my own set of values, but if I thought Michael Sam can get 20 sacks a year or 10 sacks a year, I would have wanted the Rams to keep Michael Sam, right? Because it's about football. Keep it about football. All right. I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView, and I was a sports writer for 21 years, and I get the privilege of doing this. I do RamView now thanks to our sponsors, Kistler Law, and I also write books. My books are on Amazon. You can find them there. Type in Joe Terosian. I've written a couple of high school football novels that were received well. As you look at that page, you're going to find out that my day job is I pastor a small church in Burbank Faith Nazarene, which can be seen here on YouTube. Check out our channel. You can even subscribe to our channel, Burbank Faith Virtual, as well as our website, burbankfaithvirtual.com, Burbank Faith Virtual on Facebook, and links on all the major platforms. So one of the founding members at Mid-Valley Sports with the guys over there, Tim and Dwayne, they're still covering football there. They're in the room with the Chargers, and I get to be here again, thanks to our sponsors. So let's look at some of the questions that kind of came in. I did answer Mark Reber. Tim Burns, our good friend up north. I was 11-2 yesterday. Tampa and the Rams failed me. This is a nightmare in Ram world. I went 10-3. Okay. Let's see. Joe Montana, according to Dwayne, Joe Montana is a quick processor, not a big arm, quick processor. And I like the jet sweep as well as the next guy, but I do like the jet sweep. No need for sarcasm there. Tim Burns, looking back at the trade deadline, wondering was a good time to get a number one and change for Donald, given we may be subpar for the rest of his career. I think we were talking about that, Tim. We were talking about if someone was going to offer you something substantial for Aaron Donald, take it now. Take it now. Rob Sorge, time to tank. Okay, great. Let's just see how Steeler fan Rob, how your team does with Kenny Pickett going forward. Mark Reiber, Stafford should be ready to be ready after the bye. He should be, right? They were close to, there was almost a game day decision for him not to play because of his thumb. So I liked it that they didn't play him. I didn't like the guy I saw, but I like that they didn't play him because now he's got 3 weeks. So any lingering questions about his hip or other stuff gets to heal, right? So he didn't play this week. He's not playing next week. And then he's got all of the following week to get ready for Seattle when Seattle comes to L.A. with a struggling quarterback by the name of Geno Smith. The refs are woke. Man, there's something, man. But whatever it is, they're not reffing ever since you started paying them full time. I guess Pierce forgot about Reggie McKenzie. Yeah, Reggie McKenzie was the Raiders GM, but I don't think he was there when Art Shell was there, right? I think what Pierce was talking about was everyone being there at the same time. And I don't know what he was talking about. I just wanted the kid, and to me, he's a kid. Just enjoy the win, man. Enjoy the win because I think he can breathe some fire. Yeah, it's almost they got a repeat of Variaci, the special teams guy that took over after Gruden was fired, and they decided not to run with him. Heck, I would stick with Pierce if they could peel off some victories. I would stick with Pierce right now because I think what Raider fans want to see, and if you're a Raider fan out there, let me know. I think they just want to see the culture of the Raiders. They want to see some bad dudes. Maybe you're not going to be perfect, but they just want to see you hit somebody, right? They just want to see you care. I thought it was interesting is Devontae Adams didn't have a big game yesterday, and as frustrated as he was the week before, he didn't have a big game, but you saw Devontae Adams right there with everybody else jumping up and down and being excited in that locker room. So that was a cool scene. So I want Antonio Pierce to do well. Rams update, Stafford was out, Havenstein was out, Ernest Jones was out. Kobe Durant, there's another good reason we're going on by. Kobe Durant started, played a few snaps, and then left with his shoulder. We want that dude healed. And finally, I think we do want Kobe Durant on the boundary. We want Quentin Lake in the star position covering the slot. And I think that's the best way to go. And then Witherspoon, we'll just live with Witherspoon. Darian Kendrick yesterday, healthy, only 3 snaps. And then even when Durant went out, the team went with Duke Shelley, which was interesting is they didn't even go to Travius Tomlinson-Hodges. They didn't even turn to him. John Johnson got some snaps. Another note here, did you know that of all the edge rushers drafted in the 2023 draft, do you know who's leading all the drafted edge rushers in sacks? Byron Young has 5 sacks to lead them all, right? We're at the halfway point of the season, and Byron Young has 5 sacks, and he's on track to maybe likely finish with 10, getting 10 sacks out of the third round, 77th overall pick. That's a lot of value, man. That is a lot of value, and he's just learning, right? He's just learning, and so we're excited about that. There's some positive there. Was there anything about the offensive line that looked good to you yesterday? There wasn't a thing that looked good to me. They were awful across the board, but here's the thing. What did your eyes tell you, right? My eyes told me the offensive line looked terrible, right? But if you look at PFF's grades, and I like PFF, but, man, they've been a little wonky this year. But if you look at Pro Football Focus's grades for pass protection across the board, Jackson, Avila, Shelton, Dotson, Noteboom, they graded them all in their 70 range. And when you get into the 70 range, you're getting into very good, and they weren't good. They weren't good. And against the regarding the run, they were horrid. I've never seen a team so poor against the run. And this really makes you wonder. I think on Wednesday we're going to come back and we're going to look at the free agent offensive linemen for next year and see what's out there. Because I think if you're going to draft in the top 10, which could be where the Rams end up drafting without something really changing, if you're going to draft in the top 10, you're going to get a high-level skill performer and go from there. I don't know unless it's some heavy-duty top-end left tackle, you're going to draft a skill performer. You're going to draft a quarterback. You're going to draft a Marvin Harrison type. You're going to draft something along those lines. And so maybe free agency is where the Rams get a guard or tackle or maybe even a center. We'll see. And I don't want to hear about Creed Humphrey. Okay, college football top 10. I'm not going to give my top 10, give the scores. Michigan beat. They hammered Purdue. Of course, Washington beat USC. Florida State beat Pittsburgh. Oregon beat Cal, no letdown. Oregon's climbing the ranks here. Oregon beat Cal 63-19. That's the score you should beat Cal by. USC beat Cal 50-49. The Ducks beat them 63-19. That's why Alex Grinch is unemployed. Ohio State beat Rutgers 35-16. Kansas State, I took Kansas State, and they went and lost in overtime to Texas without Quinn Ewers 33-30. Jalen Milroe, Alabama's 8-1. They beat the Crimson. They beat LSU 42-28. Jayhawks stepped up, they beat Iowa State 28-21 after the big win against Oklahoma. No letdown. And Oklahoma, after the big loss against Kansas, lost to the Cowboys. Oklahoma State 27-24. And Ole Miss won a really interesting game against Texas A&M 38-35. So there we go. Georgia's going to be in the top 10 this week. I saw Georgia, Missouri. Georgia beat them 30-21, but I think Michigan's still going to be number one. Looking at the NFL, we looking at week 9 here. 49ers, Lions, Jaguars, Broncos were on bye. Titans, Steelers, we had that game on Thursday. Chiefs scored all their points in the first half and beat the Dolphins 21-14. I was expecting a little more offense. Vikings beat the Falcons in Atlanta. Have Dobbs will travel, reads the card of a man. Really getting interested in Josh Dobbs. It's a lot of fun. Seahawks get blown out in Baltimore 37-3. Ravens get the Browns next week at home, and I think they're going to get Deshaun Watson. Last time when the Browns faced the Ravens, I think it was week 4, they faced former UCLA quarterback DTR. They blew him out 28-3. It'll be interesting to see how that game goes. Cardinals, Browns, Cleveland registered 7 sacks in their 27-0 win. Texans, Buccaneers, CJ Stroud, man. 5 touchdown passes, 470 yards. Yeah, there's a lot to believe in there. Texans going to New England. They beat the Patriots. Sudden Sam Howell, 325 yards passing. Bears, Saints in the Superdome. New Orleans wins 24-17. Colts, Panthers. Colts go on the road to Carolina. Carolina's coming off their first win. You think they're getting it together. The Colts don't have anybody rush for over 50 yards. Gardner Minshew doesn't throw an interception, and they win 27-13. A lot of growing pains for Bryce Young and that group down there. Giants, Raiders, we talked about that. Raiders won 30-6. Great win for the Raiders. Stick with Aiden O'Connell. Live that dream. Go with the Purdue kid. Cowboys, Eagles. Eagles 28-23. The one thing about that game that gets me worried about, well, not worried because it's not my team, is, man, Jalen Hurts is tough. Jalen Hurts takes a lot of hits. Jalen Hurts, what's going to be left of him when we get to week 17, week 18, when we get to February or the end of January? You better – can you imagine Jalen Hurts goes out and the guy you bring in is Marcus Mariota? Right. Welcome to Fright Night, right? For real. Bills, Bengals. Bengals look really good right now, 24-18. The Bengals were the better team. The intentional grounding call on Josh Allen, the taunting call, those didn't cost the Bills the game. The Bengals are the better team. Joe Burrow is just playing great ball right now. And tonight, I'll never take the Chargers. I'm going Jets over the Bolts tonight on Monday Night Football. Tim Burns, I finished 10-3 this week. Well, hopefully I'll be 11-3 before the week is over. Quick, on this day in Rams history, before we come up to the 40-minute mark, the Rams waived Curt Warner on this day in 1990. Now, I know what you're thinking. Not you, but maybe the others, the unwashed. There was another Curt Warner who was a heck of a running back that was at Penn State and had a great career in Seattle. In the first round of the 1983 draft, the Baltimore Colts drafted who? John Elway. He wouldn't play there. They traded him to Denver. Second pick overall in the 83 draft was this dude named Eric Dickerson that came to the Rams, right? Third overall pick was Curt Warner out of Penn State. Curt Warner rushed for 1,000 yards 4 times in his Seattle career, 985 yards in another, even after blowing out his knee in week 1 of the 84 season and missing the rest of that. But by the time the Rams got him in 1990, they were trying to get him to replace Greg Bell, who had 2 amazing seasons for the Rams in 88 and 89. And they tried to replace him with the 29-year-old Curt Warner, who was spent. Warner lasted 7 weeks, started 2 games, scored 1 touchdown. averaged 2.8 yards per carry, and the Rams waived him. It was kind of a sad ending. He's really been forgotten, but he was a great back through most of the 80s, and people seem to have forgotten him. I wanted to get that one out real quick here. Tomorrow, since we're not on the air tomorrow, November 7th, November 7th, 1972 was a big day in Rams history. They signed a free agent quarterback named James Harris and put him on the taxi squad. And eventually, within 2 years, he became the Rams starting quarterback. So I'm a big fan of James Harris. On this day in 1972, the Rams signed him. On this day in 1979, the Rams signed a backup quarterback named Bob Lee, General Lee, who played for the Falcons, was a starting quarterback there in their nice 9-5 season in 73. He was also the quarterback that engineered the upset of the Rams in the Mud Bowl. The Rams signed him as a free agent because Hayden was gone for the year. Ferragamo was young, and they wanted some insurance, and Lee was the insurance quarterback starting. He was second. I think Jeff Rutledge was the third quarterback that season. So thought it was interesting. Born on November 7th, that's tomorrow, is Elvis Peacock. Elvis Peacock will be turning 67 tomorrow. Here's the thing. Elvis Peacock is kind of like something Shakespearean when it comes to NFL. This was a guy that was 6'1", 212. And when he was in high school, he ran the 100 in 9.4 when the world record at the time was 9.1. 6'1", 212. Went to Oklahoma, was in a backfield. His backfield that he was in 77 and in Oklahoma, Thomas Lott was the quarterback. They were running the wishbone. Kenny King had a nice run with the Raiders, Kenny King, and Billy Sims, who won the Heisman in 78 after Peacock left. Other players he played with were Joe Washington in 75, David Overstreet. This pretty special dude, Elvis Peacock. The Rams drafted him 20th overall in 1978. And they did it. It was a Klosterman special kind of. The Rams had the 23rd overall pick, and they moved up to 20, and they swapped first rounders with Cleveland, and they gave up the number 103 overall that didn't amount to anything to move up 3 spots. That's a pretty cheap move up for 3 spots. And the Rams took Elvis Peacock. The Browns, of course, took Ozzie Newsome, and that's a whole other story. But it was a good move by the Rams to draft Peacock in 78. McCutcheon was in 77, had another 1,000-yard year, but in 78, his body started breaking down, and he was never the same after the 77 season. They drafted Wendell Tyler, I think, 3rd round the year before out of UCLA, but I don't think they knew what they had in Wendell Tyler yet. And so the Rams saw an opportunity to grab a dynamic back like Elvis Peacock. This guy was physical. He could catch. He was something special. And then I can't remember what it was. I think it was a knee injury in 78, an ankle injury in 79, and another knee injury in 80. And it cost him his career. He missed all of 78 with an injury. How different would that have been? I think the Rams were kind of running McCutcheon in and out there. They signed Anthony Davis. They were desperate. Cullen Bryant and Capoletti were the feature backs that year. They had not turned anything over to Wendell Tyler in those days. If Elvis Peacock had played, maybe something would have looked a little bit different. But Peacock in his Ram career, literally playing the 79 and 80 seasons, had 216 carries, 1,001 yards, 7 touchdowns, 46 catches, and 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdown receptions. He was a good back. And his body gave out on him because his knees went. I remember him trying out for the USFL, and they let him go. He had calcium deposits in his knees, and he just the brutality of the NFL, man. But I didn't like it when people listed him in 1978. They listed him as a bust. He wasn't a bust, that's not what a bust is. Johnny Manziel's a bust, okay? This guy was not a bust. This guy just got injured. It was a great trade by Don Klosterman. It just didn't happen for Elvis Peacock. Maybe I could write a book, The What If Elvis Peacock played 10 years for the Rams. That would be kind of fun. I wanted to get that one out. And I think we've looked at all that, and I think that is
It was a stone groove, my man.
It is a stone groove, and I think that's going to do it there. I'm going to get ready to wrap this thing up because we are coming up to the dreaded 45-minute mark. Thank you guys for clicking on. Those that have clicked on later, please leave your comments. If you could hit your like buttons, if you could tell friends to subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun talking this today. I'd like to be talking about Ram wins, right? But we'll see, right? We got a week off. I think our chances against the bye are pretty good. I think Brett Rippon is undefeated against the bye, and I think the Rams are going to come out of this bye maybe 35-31. It should be a shootout, and they should take the win here. Thank you guys for clicking on, and be sure to follow us on Spotify. I closed with the wrong one. There we go. I got to go. I pushed the wrong button. Check us out on Spotify, guys. God bless. Take care. We'll see you soon.